Okay, seeing it's 7 o'clock, we'll call this school board meeting to order. If you'll stand, please, remove your hats, and we will recite the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call vote, please, Mary Kay.
Dr. Dave Bardo. Here. Trina Borneman. Dr. Noel Deep.
Here.
Jill Maddock-Nelson.
Here.
Kristen Matt Miller.
Here.
Andy Mary.
Here.
Danny Pyatt.
Here.
Angie Schreiber.
Here.
JD Schrader.
Okay, moving on to public comment. To permit fair and orderly public expression, the board shall provide a period for public participation at every regular meeting of the board and publish rules to govern such participation in board meetings. The presiding officer of each board meeting at which public participation is permitted shall administer the rules of the board for its conduct. Number one, public participation shall be permitted before the board takes official action on any issue of substance. Letter B, attendees must register their intention to participate in the public portion of the meeting upon their arrival at the meeting. C, participants must be recognized by the presiding officer and will be requested to preface their comments by an announcement of their name and group affiliation if and when appropriate. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 5 minutes duration. No participant may speak more than once on the same topic unless all others who wish to speak on that topic have been heard. And this portion of the meeting during which the participation of the public is invited shall be limited to 60 minutes unless extended by a vote of the board. Does everybody understand those rules for public participation? And we have one person that has signed up, Dodie Hanzik.
Dodie Hanzik, and my affiliation is I'm a member of the community. Several days a week for 9 years, ending in 2018, I was a regular elementary classroom volunteer. Over the last 4 to 5 years of that duration, I observed ever-escalating incidents of unprovoked, unsafe, and disturbing student behaviors. Daily pandemonium created an atmosphere of fear and confusion for students and frustration for teachers. It's my belief that our teachers come to work each day for the children we serve. These well-educated, bright, creative, caring people, many of whom have grown up in this community and have family here, have a passion for teaching. They love their students. They have vested interest in the community. Their greatest desire is for their students' success instead. They're expected to successfully teach a classroom of children while laboring under a burgeoning load of failing administrative demands touted as best practices being force-fed to districts across the state by the Wisconsin Department of Instruction for building an evidence-based framework for social and emotional learning, educating our children. Responsive classroom, restorative practices, positive behavioral interventions and supports, zones of regulation, social and emotional learning in an evidence-based framework in which our students acquire and effectively apply the knowledge, attitudes, and skills necessary to understand and manage emotions, set and achieve positive goals, feel and show sympathy for others, establish and maintain positive relationships, and make responsible decisions. If this sounds like a lot of gobbledygook to you, let me say, me too. When teachers must stop teaching due to dramatic interruptions in the classroom and hallways, it doesn't take a lot of smarts to figure out why these inclusion policies have steadily dragged student test scores, teacher morale, student behavior, and school safety down the slippery slope of failure. I advocate for the district to provide a safe learning environment for our children and for getting back to basics for teachers to be able to teach. Our teachers and staff deserve to have an open-minded administration which willingly solicits input of tenured staff. All employees deserve an administration willing to listen to grievances without them having to fear retaliation and not have to wait until the year of their retirement to speak up regarding behavior issues in a classroom. As a person who is deeply concerned for the welfare of all of our children, I applaud today's school board and the effort to take back their authority, basing decisions on sound reasoning reflective of community values. Thank you.
Thank you, Dodie, for that comment of what you've written. And I just want to let you know that the board has tasked the administration with going through the disciplinary process. And so each school on each level of each building is working through that process, and they've been reporting back to us. We've had one report already, and we're just waiting for the teams to come back together next month in August, and then they'll give us another report, and we'll go on farther for policy changes and or any other changes that need to be made for the disciplinary process in the schools. Just to give you a quick update. Thank you so much. Thank you. Item number 3, approval of agenda, minutes, and financial reports. I'm looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the consent agenda, including the minutes from June 28, 2022 Board of Education meeting, minutes from the special meeting on July 14, 2022, financial reports for June 2022, consideration of the current bills, check number 5989 through 6002, with a special check run end of fiscal year, and number 6003 to 6055 in the amount of $302,089.96. ACH number 212201233 through 212201246, special ACH run end of fiscal year, and 222300002 through 223000051 in the amount of $722,426.47, and one wire transfer in the amount of $23,211.90, for a total of $1,047,728.33.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
I just have one question, okay? So when we're looking at the minutes and it says under the closed session, and it talks about kind of like a high view of what the closed session was about, and then on the bottom it says voted, the following voted yes, it makes it appear as though that roll call vote was for all topics that were discussed in that closed session, and that's not reflective of what happened.
Mary Kay, I believe that we don't name who voted in closed session, but we name the number of how a vote is received, correct?
I read it as voted to come out of closed session.
Exactly.
It's listed, if you see, Angie, right under exit closed session.
Mm-hmm.
Those are, right, the ones who voted to come out of closed, that's all.
Okay, I understand that because I asked Mary Kay about this too, but I'm just saying it appears as though it lists the roll call vote, and then it also appears to give the, the 8-0 versus,
Because then under,
so we voted on a number of things in that.
right,
session,
under
so-
action, then there are no numbers or names or anything,
In closed session.
as it should be. Does that make sense?
It does, but to me, but I'm just thinking for the public, if they want to look back at this, I think it should be more clear saying. Does anybody else see how that could be mistaken?
Well, actually, things that are taken up in closed session, according to our attorney, Dean Dietrich,
Yep.
when we vote in closed session, that information is not brought out as far as who voted, how they voted. It's just if the board passes whatever's happened or did not pass what was happening in closed session. And that's what is announced as you come out of closed session.
I guess I understand that.
I think, is it because closed session is bolded above exit closed session, that it presents as though exit closed session reflects?
Yeah, yes.
I can see that.
I think from the outside looking in at this, I think, you know, if you're not familiar with how closed sessions work and stuff like that, it could be easily mistakenly read, so.
So it's basically you have, what's recorded is a vote to go into closed.
Right.
And
No,
a
no,
vote.
I understand
And
it.
a vote to go out.
Mhm.
And then the action that was taken in closed session is marked by 1 and 2.
Yes. I'm saying it could be confusing to others. I understand, we all understand, we all were there.
Yeah.
So,
Right.
but from others outside looking in, so I don't know if I should make a motion to amend the minutes as presented to make it more clear, or?
I really don't understand, Angie, how we can make it more clear because we cannot identify the numbers of the vote, of how individuals voted, because it is closed session. And it deals with personnel issues or other matters that we discussed during closed session.
Okay,
That we are legal by statute to keep in closed session.
okay.
Correct.
So if the board votes, for example,
No, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
if we come up with no, then as a result of closed session, then it would say the board does not accept the recommendation. But because the board voted the majority voted that it accepted the recommendation, that's why it just states the board accepts the recommendation.
Yes, I just wanted on the
Yeah.
record that that was not the vote for what we discussed in closed session, so. Okay.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, Mary Kay, roll call vote, please.
Bartle,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Matt Miller,
Yes?
Mary,
Yes.
Schreiber,
No?
Hyatt,
Yes. And the motion carries. Moving on to new business, letter A is the committee appointments. All of you have looked at the attachment that Mary Kay put on there for the committee appointments. And the first committee meeting will be August the 1st at 6 o'clock. The Finance Committee will meet from 6 to 7:15. And then Curriculum Committee will meet on August the 1st at 7:30, from 7:30 to 8:45. So there'll be a 15-minute break in between the two committee meetings. Between now and the committee meeting, the chairman of the committees will meet with the respective administrator and go over information that is relevant to that meeting for the committee that will be coming up, and then set their agenda, and the agenda will go to Mary Kay for posting. And as far as posting, Dean he's been talking, our attorney, I just talked with him again yet today, and he's going to be getting back with me as to the exact verbiage that Mary Kay will post with the agenda, because no action is being taken at committee meetings. This is information only, so he'll get back with both you and I on how that should be posted for the committee meetings. So the committee structure is in case you didn't get a chance to look at the attachment, the Finance Committee is made up of Dr. David Bardo as the chairman, and the co-chair is Jill Maddock-Nelson. Noel Deep is a committee member, and the administrator is Tim Prunty. The Curriculum and Instruction Committee, the chairman is Jill Maddock-Nelson, co-chair is Dr. David Bardo, with J.D. Schrader being a committee member, and the administrator is Amy Doms. The Building and Grounds will meet on the second Tuesday of each month at 6 o'clock from 6 to 7:15. Building and Grounds Committee Chairman is Angie Schreiber, co-chair Kristen Mattmiller, and Andy Mary being the committee member, the board member. And the administrator will be Jake Leiterman. Pupil Services and Special Education will meet on the second Monday of each month from 7:30 to 8:45. Chairman will be Kristen Mattmiller, co-chair Angie Schreiber, and board member Trina Borneman, and the administrator Heidi Siebert-Proyo. The Policy Committee will meet as needed, so when the Policy Committee meets, we will meet on the third Monday, and I will serve as the chairman of the Policy Committee, Dr. David Bardo is the co-chair, and J.D. Schrader as the board member, and the administrator representing policy will be Dr. Julie Sprague. In the event that there's a holiday or an observed holiday that falls on a committee meeting day, the committee will meet the very next day, which will be Tuesday, at the same times as regularly scheduled meetings. So for example, we have Labor Day coming up on that first Monday. So the first Monday meetings will be moved to that Tuesday. And Mary Kay will have all of the committee meetings posted just as soon as we go through. She gave them to me to look at. So those will be posted on the website soon. Board members may attend any of the committee meetings as a community member. And I did get clarification from Dean Dietrich, our attorney, as to how that operates, how that works. And he said that, yes, that it is correct that committee members are the board members that are appointed. Other board members may attend, but they are attending as a community member. Okay?
Are we meeting in here?
Yes, meeting in this room as well. Yes, question. Come up to the microphone, please.
I was just going to ask how the times are determined for the committees as far as who went first and who didn't, who went second, and then also who will be in charge of setting up that meeting to meet with the chair of the committee and the administrator.
The chairman will be setting up, because these are board meetings, the
Okay.
chairman will be setting up those meetings. And I just drew from a hat and put these meetings together to base it upon people coming on one Monday rather than separate Mondays.
I just wasn't sure about the
Yeah.
6 o'clock, 7:30,
Yeah.
how that was determined.
Yeah.
Okay.
When do you want the agendas to be created? Like, how many days in advance of the meeting do you want that?
There's nothing that's set. That was something that I did ask Dean about, the agendas. And as far as setting an agenda for public, it does not have to be published, the agenda. All we have to publish is that there may be a quorum of the board present. However, no board action is taken. So I would follow the same path that we would follow for board member agendas, just to show transparency to the community, and we'll adjust, or we will publish all of the agendas for the community, for the committee members as well, to the community. Does that make sense?
When do you want those published?
We'll follow the same, so it'll be 5 days prior to coming to the board, and then 3 days to the community. I think that's what depends on what this policy that we have that we're going to be voting on, if it passes in just a moment. But what the policy states right now is 3 days prior to the meeting, isn't it? Yes. Good question. Any other questions? Okay. Dave?
Personally, I don't think it matters to Jill and I if finance and curriculum and instruction are reversed. If it works better for one of the two parties to go at 6 and one to go at 7:30, we'll just need to know that. And I would assume the same thing for the others, for on the second.
What we don't want to happen is flip-flopping all the time.
Right.
We want to have it, the way that we want to set it is the way it's going to be. So if, Heidi, if we do need to change the Monday, the 2 different meetings earlier and later, let's do that starting out of the gate on August the 1st. Just let me know. Okay, moving on to item letter B, the RPIC update, and Dr. Sprague will take over from here.
With my team, I'll move to that podium.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
And it would be very graceful, I'm sure.
Okay, this is unusual being
On
at
that
this
side.
podium. Dustin, if you would actually go to the presentation, the first 2 attachments we uploaded in case you had time to read some, well, number 1, read, and number 2, watch a video for background information. But especially for new board members, we wanted to provide a little bit of information so that later in this meeting, when you vote on whether or not we continue with the RPIC grant, hopefully we're all working from the same information. So in 2019, that's when we applied for this grant. Because it originated, we realized we had over-identified students of poverty and students of color in special education. So that was kind of a big deal. What are we going to do about that? However, at that same time, Wisconsin was really moving forward with educational equity because the entire state came to realize that what we were doing to close achievement gaps in the state wasn't working. It was not just our district that had growing gaps, it was most of the state. So at that time then, we knew we had a problem here in Antigo. And just to remind you about how significant educational equity is, the DPI now requires us to disaggregate that data whenever we report it. Secondly, in policy 2260, which talks about district administrator job responsibilities, it indicates that I'm required to review curriculum for bias, train staff to solve issues of bias, and verify that each and every one of our programs is accessible to each and every student. So that's really part of what the grant helps us do. And then it's so important that the board approved our mission and vision a while back as well, and that is rooted in educational equity. So if you go to the next slide, please, Dustin. This iceberg then is here to show that we thought we had just this, not little, but we thought we had a contained problem to solve, close the gaps, academic gaps for our students with disabilities. But when we started looking, we realized that the problem was much bigger, like an iceberg. It was much deeper than any of us realized. And what we discovered then was just a symptom of a bigger issue, and that was our universal instruction and learning. This is not a situation that, or a grant that addresses only students with special needs by any means. It's designed really to help each and every student. So then, thank you, Dustin, why the grant? And there are a few reasons for that. We needed systematic change because while the DPI had not identified us in 2019 as a district in need of improvement, we were close. So we thought we would be proactive. And I remember that feeling in 2019, get out in front of it and start making improvements before somebody else comes in and tells us what we're going to do, because it's really critical that the board understand districts who are identified in need of improvement, this is the work that they are forced to do. And then the highlight, that was the first time in this district that we had a student learning and support team working together. So Amy's department, Heidi's department, braided together for each and every student, because it used to be, when I was hired, we worked in silos. And as a farmer's daughter, that analogy is one I can understand, because there was no overlap. And you could, climb the ladder, you could go down, but you remained in that one area, really somewhat not understanding what was happening in other areas. And it should not be like that. So the grant helped us move forward.
All right, so I got tasked with explaining LEA determinations. So what LEA determinations are the way that DPI determines if districts meet the requirements of IDEA Part B, which just governs how special education services are provided to children with disabilities. Because I know this can be confusing language up here. So LEA determinations are based on pretty much two factors, which are compliance and then result indicators. DPI began to incorporate results, so those outcome measures, for LEA determinations in 2016, and they've slowly increased the weight of those outcome measures. So when we look historically over our determinations, what we're really looking at is different weights of different things. In 2019, they became 50-50 and have stayed at that level, just to give you some context. So LEA determinations in 2018, as Dr. Sprague said, we saw a lot of indicators saying we're probably going to be identified pretty soon here. So then we knew it was coming. As Dr. Sprague said, we applied for the grant. The next year, we were right, we were identified. And they give us a warning year, like, hey, this is there, you're in a warning. And from there, we continued on, and we were able to meet requirements in 2020 and 2021.
And just to, just to give just a little bit more of what the indicators are, we didn't attach those in there. What Megan was talking about are the special ed indicators, and outcomes don't just mean outcomes for academics like math and reading. That is one outcome, but it's also our inclusive, so they call it EE codes, our environmental codes. So how much students with disabilities are accessing the general curriculum or general setting. So those are a few outcomes. Also graduation rates is an outcome, dropout rates is an outcome. Compliance would be like our compliance with our special education documentation. We've always been 100% compliant, and also with our funding and how we use our funding. So our outcomes have slowly increased, not yet in the two areas that we are hoping for is in reading and math. We are making slow gains within the indicator, and we're hoping to see more with the work that we're doing with all students. But just so you knew what those indicators are, there's 14 plus 2. So you can get on DPI's website and look up special education indicators if you would like. So I'm gonna go to, I don't know what slide this is, right? Okay, so what is RPIC? Research to Practice Inclusive Communities. So over 5 years, we got the grant in 1920. It builds upon our PLC, our Professional Learning Communities framework, which we've done a lot of work on over the last couple years to build those systems within our schools, creating more opportunities for leadership within our schools as well. When we started, we had 11 to 12 school leaders, and now we have almost 30 school leaders spread throughout the district at all levels to help with the work that we're doing with our professional learning communities. The focus really is implementing a framework for learning at the core. So we're talking about core of teaching and learning, not core subjects like English, math, science, social studies. We're talking about the core, the universal instruction that all students should receive. So when you hear the word core. Some highlights: collaborative planning structures for each and every student in the classroom, teaching and learning strategies for students in our classrooms, which we are going to be really focusing on as we move forward this next year. And part of that was being built upon getting our standards and our learning targets, and now moving into assessment and all the work that Amy's doing in curriculum and instruction. And then sustainable coaching systems, as well as bidirectional communication for any innovation to be implemented and sustained. So what that means is coaching systems that coach whatever it is. We've been doing a lot of coaching around reading. We've been doing a lot of coaching around math. It also is around instructional practice, not just those core subjects. And so it depends on what it is that we want to implement, and that's where we focus our coaches so they can be better suited to coach teachers around strategy versus just content. Just wait a second. I was going to explain what bidirectional communication means. So that means it's not just top-down from DLT, our district leadership teams, to our school leadership teams, but also school leadership teams through our school level teams, whether it's a PBIS team, all those communication plans going up and through the system and then back down so that everybody knows what's going on at any given time. So that's really what the basis of the RPIC grant was to build and be able to sustain the systemic continuous improvement that our district needs, regardless of the innovation that we want to implement. Could be reading, could be math, inclusive communities if that's what we're gonna talk, if that's what we want to implement, and that is what we're talking about in this particular grant. You can go ahead, Dustin. So some of the benefits to students is that equitable learning opportunities, greater academic gains compared to traditional schools, that's research-based, smaller achievement gaps between students from different backgrounds and life experiences, increased opportunities to connect with diverse groups of peers, higher sense of efficacy, and ownership of unique learning plans. So that's getting students involved in their own learning, and that's a lot of what the work is as we move forward. Benefits to staff are huge. Reduced isolation, you're no longer a teacher by yourself, planning by yourself, trying to deal with all the things that come into a classroom by yourself. You're working with teams of experts around students to help plan for them the first time around. Increased commitment and shared responsibility, leveraging collaborative practices to amplify each teacher's strength, higher likelihood of undertaking fundamental systemic change. And that is really what our purpose was. Prior to this grant, we really had no systems. And like Megan said, and like Dr. Sprague said, we saw the writing on the wall with our data. Lagging indicators like the forward exam, like ACT scores are lagging. And we saw some pretty, testing comes years, what we see is the product of what happened a couple years prior. And so we have to build our systems to make the chance that that's not gonna happen anymore higher as we move forward, as we implement better strategies and practices.
I wanted to speak on this one just in case any of us are still misunderstanding, because what I learned through all of the discussion in recent years with the board is that there's a tendency to equate ICS with the grant, and that is not the case. ICS, yes, we had modules related to ICS, but the grant, hopefully you understand after tonight, tonight's reminder, is so much more. And now what we'd like to do is focus on moving forward, like with our continuous improvement plan. We just wrapped up year 3. That was derived from our grant work. So it's really about improving our systems and improving student achievement.
A little shorter than the rest. So like Heidi mentioned, there are 2 years left in the grant, 22-23 and then 23-24. So we wanted to give you a preview of which modules we haven't covered yet. So it's modules 9 through 13. So I just gave kind of a quick overview of each one. So module 9 is really where I guess I would say the work starts happening for teachers, where you are learning about what are high quality instructional strategies and practices that take into account how a child learns best and how we can use those the first time, excuse me, that we are teaching them. And in this module, it gives a variety of examples. I'm not going to go into this too much, but they also talk about, if people are familiar, Hattie's research, which he did a lot of meta-analyses, analyses, talking about kind of rating each instructional practice and strategy, giving it a rating of what gives you really the most bang for your buck. So based off of his list, looking at things that we've been doing for years really don't have the most effective outcomes. So we need, as the practitioners, to think about what are we using within our classrooms that are going to have the biggest impact for all students. Because the grant, I don't remember which person said it, really isn't just about students with IEPs, it's about every student that you have in your classroom. And we all know that their needs are a lot greater than they used to be even in a few years ago. So that is Module 9, talking about how educators can use these different practices. And like with anything, it takes practice to learn something new that you're not used to doing. And so when you have a collaborative team that you can work with as a teacher, that gives you time to work out, hey, how can we use this in our classrooms? How can we make it impactful for all of our students? Moving on to Module 10, this one talks about how not just our district, but many districts rely on pull-out models. Like, oh, if a student has an IEP, we tend to pull them out so they can get specialized instruction for so many minutes for reading, so many minutes for math. Or like we were talking about earlier, students who have behaviors, well, they should come out of the classroom, which, you know, at the time that seemed like that was what was gonna work, but realizing that, you know, when we are pulling out, this actually isolates the educators too. I'm not working closely with the teachers who are doing those pull-out minutes because I'm in the classroom and I'm working with my other students. There's not enough time in the day for us to really collaborate unless that's planned out ahead of time. So talking about not only how the current pull-out model affects children, but it also does hinder how much educators can learn from each other too, and really trying to synthesize, like, well, what are you teaching Bobby? Well, you have him for reading, and then when he comes to my room for reading, I don't know where you left off, and what am I supposed to do? It really ends up being a lot of disconnect. So this Module 10 goes into how collaborative teams, the roles and responsibilities that we had as staff in prior years will shift a little bit because, like we talked about before, it's not just the classroom teacher's responsibility to make sure those students learn everything they need. It's all of our responsibility, including our administration, including community, including families. Like, how can we all work together to make sure our students are learning what they need to learn? All right, moving to Module 11. This Module 11 talks about cost. So going through how we have pull-out programs, separate programs and classes definitely are quick fixes and things that's how we've done them in the past, but they really don't lead to long-term solutions, which is kind of where we're at now, seeing the effects of practices we've done previously. We're not getting the outcomes that we anticipated, and research says you're not gonna get the outcomes that you want. So we need to figure out how can we change that. And they also talk about how those separate programs and classes also lead to higher costs for the district. So in Module 11, they actually go through and teach how to do a funding analysis, basically looking at what our district is spending money on and really looking to see, is it in alignment with what we said our mission and vision is? And, you know, with our mission and vision, we did commit to high levels of learning for each and every student. And to me, that means even the students who have behaviors every single day, and you want them to be out of your classroom because it would be much easier for everyone else, but by removing them, we're not giving them high levels of learning. So we need to figure out what can we do different to support that student and the teachers that work with that student too. Because just having a kid in a class without a plan doesn't work, which is kind of where we're at. We thought, you know, the next step is let's include all kids in the classroom, but we didn't proactively prepare anyone for that. We just put them in the classroom and then realized no one was ready. We didn't have a plan. We weren't really looking at each individual learner. We were still focusing on what is an average student, which really doesn't exist anymore because every student is different with what they bring to school. And also along with that, looking at our district's mission and vision, highlighting the part where we talk about having a sense of belonging for students and staff. And I just think, like, if I was a student who I am on a daily basis asked or told I have to leave my classroom, that really doesn't build any sense of belonging. And why would my peers think I should be in that classroom? Because we don't have any relationship now. I'm just the kid who gets kicked out all the time. So I just really go back to how these tie into our mission and vision and the commitments that we've made to our students and to our staff also. Module 12 talks about district policies and procedures, which we're kind of actually already doing some of this by looking at our discipline policies and procedures. And as policies and procedures come up, really to look at, do they align with what we put in our district's mission and vision? And finally, Module 13, and we're kind of already working on this too through our continuous improvement plans, is basically trying to create multi-year action plans. What is going to be our path forward? Because we have to plan, you know, for what's right in front of us, but also long-term. You know, where is that going to take us? What resources, funds, and such are we going to need to do that? So that's just kind of a overview of what is left for the modules.
Good evening. Okay, so just a little bit of feedback that you've probably seen in the past. This was part of other presentations because the first 2 years were really about professional learning. We haven't done much that would impact a student necessarily at this point. It's really been a lot of learning around our own knowledge process and how we've done things in a school. So here you can see some comments from teachers. There were some challenging conversations. This was the first year we were really going through a lot of virtual meetings, so we did a lot of this work virtually. And that's when April Schofield was in our district as our instructional coach, and now we have Carlene in that role, but we were doing a lot of virtual learning. So you can see here that there's some feedback about how we knew it would be a long road. Systems change can take 5 to 7 years, so really just starting this process can seem pretty scary and a lot of work to do. In the second year, people are feeling a little more settled, still just doing some learning. And currently this year, through the 21-22 school year in our professional development, we tracked a lot of relevancy to teachers in their classroom practices. And if you've been on the board for a while, you would have seen those charts that I had shared with you about people rating their relevancy. The majority on a 1 to 5 scale were always in the 3 to 4 range of the relevancy to the carryover immediately to their classroom, with some of the highest ratings in the areas of instructional strategies, not only academic, but also for students to help better understand some of the, when Bray was talking last time about some of the strategies they did with mental health, brain research, learning how to respond to students when they might be in crisis and things of those nature. So at this time in spring 2021, we took a different sampling too of teachers and how they were feeling and any staff that was a part of the learning. And 53% of our staff were feeling comfortable and excited with the instruction and learning that they were doing. 37% were feeling uncomfortable but engaged and still excited about the work, because it can be uncomfortable to do something different and change, even if that's something small like changing your diet or trying to be more active or anything. It can be uncomfortable. So they were saying they were uncomfortable but still engaged and excited about the process. And at that time, we had about less than 2% of our staff stating that they were feeling uncomfortable. So all of these things, we recognize it can be hard, but our ultimate goal is really to help students through our structures, our funding, our policies, and our procedures to all be successful. So at the end, we just have a quote, because we really do want to touch each and every student in a positive way for their academic success.
because it was brought up a couple of times, just to be clear by Carlene and actually Ms. Doty, talking about inclusion. We don't have an inclusion policy. What this work is about inclusivity of students, understanding where students are coming from, and first-time learning, and trying to get students as much access to first-time learning as they possibly can. In special education, we still have to write IEPs that are individualized, and we have some kids, we're still not at a rate that the state would say that we're including our students as what they, 80%, where they are 80% more in the classroom than they are out, and we're in the 70s still. So we still are pulling our kids out more than what the state would recommend for different disabilities. And as far as when we look at what a child needs, we always want to ask the question when we're sitting at an IEP meeting, we want to say their right is to be in their classroom. Tell me why that isn't going to happen or why that can't happen based on their needs. That's the question that we have to ask and should be asking, so that it doesn't become a dumping ground for students that are not prepared and teachers that are not prepared. But our goal is that all students feel included, period. Their education might look a little different, but that's our goal, and I will fight for that until I can't fight anymore. So I just wanted to clarify that. There is no policy. It's individually based.
Okay, thank you for that presentation. We'll have discussion on this later.
I forgot I was going to say
You
that.
got 1 minute.
All I need is like 10 seconds. I just wanted to clear up, I know it was a misconception too, that the modules that we are doing for learning, those are only for staff. Those are not for students. None of that is, shared with students or anything, because I know that was a question in the past.
Thank you. We'll have discussion on this at the, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. I was just going to say, we have some good momentum going. We ask that you please support that and allow us to continue our plan of improvement. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sprague. We'll discuss on this on item letter B under consideration to approve the RPIC grant going forward. So moving on to letter C, NorthLakes Community Clinic Agreement. Dr. Sprague's out of air now, but she'll give us some information about the NorthLakes Community Clinic Agreement.
What you see there is what we've done for the last few years at no cost to the district. What I love this year is that this group, NorthLakes Community Clinic, included a graphic of the number of district students they've served. It's just a wonderful service. So just wanted to share that information with you.
Does this require board action next month? No?
It does not, because there is no payment.
Okay. Thank you. And moving on to item D, school board norms discussion. This past week, whenever Dr. Bardo and I met with Dr. Sprague about the agenda, this came up, obviously, because it's on the agenda. Last week, or 2 weeks ago now, Carla and I attended a conference over in La Crosse, and she's going to be, Heather, bringing some good stuff back to you if she hasn't already talked to you about it yet. But there we had a session with Joanne Miller. She's with CISA 8, and her session was upon mindsets, an inward mindset and an outward mindset. So at this conference that we were there, Cheryl and Patty, those of you who were at the board retreat that we had recently, Cheryl and Patty were there. And I was able to connect with them, and I told them that we're going to be talking about the board norms discussion at this board meeting. And all their eyes just got as big as silver dollars and said, "You're going to be dealing with board norms at a board meeting." I said, "Yes, that's what's on the agenda." And I said, "Why? What is wrong with that?" And both of them replied and said that it would be best to have board norms discussion at a board retreat of some sort. And I said, okay, that sounds good, but how would we go about doing this? So, by the way, let me jump back to the mindset, inward mindset and outward mindset. There is training going on at CISA 8 on August the 8th and 9th. If you would like to go, I just stumbled on this today, in fact, and I have information. If you would like to go, you can go. I've talked to just 2 minutes before the meeting tonight to Dr. Sprague about the possibility of bringing Joe Miller from CISA 8 to our district and introducing this mindset, outward mindset, inward mindset. My wife keeps reminding me of that conference even today. But anyway, it's here. If you want to look at it, maybe take opportunity to go. It's over in Gillette, so it's real close for us to get to. But if not, maybe we'll move forward to something else later. So talking with Cheryl and Patty, they took my phone and took me to the WASB website. And I got directions here on how to get you to the WASB website for the board members. You log onto your account, put your username, password in. You can read all that. But if you go down to where it says board norms, this is something that they just added to their website in June of this year. And whenever you open that up to board norms, you will find there is a 21-minute video webinar that Cheryl and Patty put on about how to bring about board norms, the process to go through that. And then there's also some sample board norms there that came from a district. I don't know what district it came from, but there's a sample of board norms there. So then I went on a little farther with Cheryl and Patty and said, well, it would be nice if we're doing these board norms, having a facilitator come to our board like you guys have already done and walk us through and facilitate this rather than Dr. Sprague saying this is what I think a board norm should be or any one of us saying this is what I think a board norm should be. They can walk us through and we will all be speaking the same language as we come out of that meeting. So they are willing to come back. I did not set a date for them to come back and walk us through board norms. But what I'd like for you to do is go through this webinar training that they have at the WASB website. If you don't know how to log on to WASB, you can contact Mary Kay, and she can help you because everybody's got their own username, which is your school email address, and then your own password is set up personally. So once you log on there, if you don't log on, it's not going to let you get in there. But log on there, do that webinar, and then let's get back in touch about the board norms. Dr. Sprague put on two attachments on there, so you can see where we've started with the draft, and which I think is wonderful. And then the board development tools workshop that we had that was presented that night when Cheryl and Patty were here. That is also on there in case you missed it or want to go back and look at it. And then we'll schedule, if you would like, Cheryl and Patty to come and facilitate, because they said to do service and justice to board norms to set up for the board, it is a good hour to 2 hour process. And if you're going to add this into a board meeting with all the other information that you have to vote on, you're going to have a longer meeting than what you've had in the past. So apparently somebody's been looking at our meetings, huh? So I talked to Dr. Sprague, and on Wednesday, I think last week, we met. And so we're just going to push this on. We're keeping it in front of us. And then hopefully by our board meeting coming up in August or in September, we'll have some dates set for us to come together and be able to go through this with Cheryl and Patty. Anybody have any questions about this? Okay. Then we'll just move along to item 5, board action, letter number A, consideration to approve the second reading of policy 0166, agenda revision. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the second reading of the revision of policy 0166 agenda.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions? I believe Mary Kay attached this on Friday after we got it back from the final draft from Dean Dietrich. Okay, hearing no questions, Mary Kay, could we have a roll call vote, please?
Deep,
Yes.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Matt Miller,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Bartle,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes. And the motion carries. Moving on to item B, consideration to approve dissolving the RPIC grant. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board dissolve the RPIC grant with CISA 9 and DPI beginning with the 2022-2023 school year and end in-service training and coaching of all staff in all related ICS equity materials and modules 1 through 13.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
Well, I guess I'll start. I've read this at a previous meeting, and I'm going to read it again. As we have learned in Module 1, Step 1, the current structural and instructional practices in school districts across the country are deficit-based. Specifically, our current system is premised on a deficit perspective that purports the primary reason for student failure is the student themselves, and this is out of ICS Equity Chapter 1. We contend that the student is not the problem, as the educational system has been historically constructed to maintain a white, cisgender, straight, middle-class, able-bodied, English-speaking, male normative. The educational system then perpetuates oppressive and marginalizing practices for students who do not fit such a normative, and in so doing denies them access to high expectations and quality learning. Basically, when I ran for re-election and with Kristen and Angie, one of our platforms was to get rid of the RPIC grant and anything doing with ICS equity. And the three of us received over 60% of the vote. That's 3 out of 5 of anybody who voted for us. This was a big part of our platform. And when you run for elected office, you either do not do what you say or you do what you say. I've been against this since I learned about ICS equity. I've read their book. I've already read chapters 9 through 13 or the modules. I know what's coming. I'm going to vote for the motion to dissolve it. I truly believe that equity is equality of outcomes, and that equality is opportunities that are equal for all. Do I want our kids to be successful? Yes. Everyone, no matter their color, no matter their gender. And I believe getting rid of this is a step in the correct direction. Some people don't talk critical race theory, but ICS equity, I believe, is a front for critical race theory. It was a 1930s German socialist movement that purports Marxist ideas. And many people aren't willing to say that, but I will. And I am voting to get rid of this.
Any other discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'll ask Mary Kay for a roll call vote, please.
So can you just clarify the vote?
To vote in favor, to vote yes, you will be dissolving the RPIC grant with CISA 9 and DPI beginning this school year and ending all in-service training, coaching of all staff, and all related ICS equity materials modules 1 through 13. A vote yes will dissolve all of that and remove ICS from our district. And a vote no will keep the RPIC grant and the ICS for equity materials and modules 1 through 13 within our district.
Thank you.
Mary Kay, roll call, please. No, we're in a vote right now.
Maddox Nelson,
Yes.
Matt Miller,
Yes.
Mary,
No.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Bartle,
Yes.
Deep,
No.
Hyatt,
Yes. And the motion carries. Moving on to item C, consideration to approve Fund 10 transfer to the Long Capital Improvement Trust Fund, Fund 46. I believe, Tim, first of all, let me ask for a motion for this.
I move the board approve Fund 10 transfer to the Long Capital Improvement Trust Fund, Fund 46, as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. That's why Tim wasn't moving.
Dustin, if you want to bring that attachment up. So this is a report that I've kind of streamlined, and you get a year-to-date report from me that's a month late in the financials. And what I've done is I've looked at specifically Fund 10, and I stripped out last year's comparison and kept it to a minimum. So we're talking here about how the revenues and expenses, we ended the year in Fund 10. And essentially, if I'm going to concentrate on the variance from budget. So we'll start out looking at the local revenues. And in local revenues, we're talking about not only the tax levy, but we're also talking about everything from mobile home taxes, we're talking about PILT payments, we're talking about admissions, we're talking about fines and fees that students pay, as well as equipment sales that we do online at the Wisconsin Surplus. Being under COVID, I was being conservative with my, I didn't know if we would have events and ball games in the beginning of the year, so I under budgeted for admissions and for equipment sales alone. We had over $12,000 in sales that were unbudgeted, which is a good thing to happen. We had open enrollment into the district higher than I had budgeted, and that's based on daily attendance for kids that are in our district, and they could be in for a couple of months or the whole year. It gets settled out in June. When we look at the state of increase was 47,000 over budget. We had, with COVID, we had an impact on transportation. And we transported many fewer students in the year prior. That must have happened across the state because in June, we got an additional transportation aid payment that was totally unexpected, which is a good thing for Anago. Then we look at the biggest variance was the federal support that we got in Fund 10. And normally our federal support is things like food service and all of our title programs and IDEA. But this was payments to the general fund. And the big ones were, we had Medicaid payments. So through special education, we provide Medicaid eligible reimbursement activities. And we don't know when we're going to get reimbursed for those. And if they're not in the current fiscal year, we get to transfer those into Fund 10. And we had an additional $100,000 in Medicaid payments that were unanticipated. We had some Emergency Connect funds that Mark got to support our Chromebook initiative for kids. That was about $200,000. And then we got the coronavirus relief funds in December. And then we had some other additional payments. We had some larger equipment sales that the auditors make us put it in a different category than the local fund. And then finally, we had some E-rate rebates that were bigger than we anticipated. So the net result was we were almost $770,000 in additional revenue than was budgeted. So now if we look at expenses, so we're looking at salaries. The primary variance there where we were over budget had to do with the offset from the, when we did the thank you payments that we made, that was from part of that federal money that we got in Fund 10 that I spoke of earlier. But the biggest variance there is from actual to budget, our benefits were much lower. And in particular, there were a couple areas. We have health insurance benefits that were way down. So we have employees that I always budget on the safe side because they can elect to pick it up if there's an event that might happen in their life, such as a child or whatever, a spouse losing a job. So I always kind of pad that benefit area. So we had teachers that chose not to take insurance. And we also have this, you've heard about our our HRA portion of our premium. That doubles up. So if they don't take insurance, I've already budgeted for the insurance and for the HRA payment. So it's kind of a double. We also, just in general, we have a sick leave reimbursement program. If somebody hasn't used any sick leave and they've reached the maximum, or they leave the district, they retire from the district, we had fewer teachers and staff eligible for sick leave reimbursement. We also had fewer staff eligible for the retiree HRA contribution. So in general, you can see that the benefits portion was over $400,000 that was underspent. Then going down, things transpired, pretty much on track all the way through. The area that I want to talk about is operating transfers. So when you look at that, that's essentially the major item that I budget for is the transfer, the support from Fund 10 of special education. So we budgeted $2.8 million. That transfer amount was down by $200,000. And again, it's a combination of staffing. Maybe we didn't hire somebody, we had one position open, maybe somebody was hired less, they didn't take benefits. And we also got additional Medicaid reimbursement in Fund 27. So it lowers the Fund 10 obligation. It has to net to zero. So this sheet is showing the effect of the transfer of the $750,000. It's already in there. And the reason it's 530 is because the Fund 10 to 27 transfer was less. So we're going to finish the year in Fund 10. If you look at the difference between the two, essentially the activity in 2021-22 is going to be close to $400,000. Questions?
So you're saying, Tim, that I did the math from the 769,321 minus 309,836? Is that the way I should have done it? Looking at the sheet?
Okay, so what I'm doing is take the,
So is the total revenues underspent? Or we received more revenues by
Correct.
769,000, and then we overspent by 309,000?
yeah, but you have to look, essentially just take the activity. So let's just follow the cash. We got $26,280,000 in revenues. We have $25,859,000 in expenses, and the difference between those two numbers,
420,000.
that's Fund 10.
Right.
But when we do the grants, and without getting into all the specifics, we have carryover from the grants. And the reason I want to caution the board is if we would transfer everything, we have something in the aid formula that we have offsetting. And I don't want to get into all the details. You can certainly ask me, and I'd be happy to walk through it. But we are spending grant carryover in addition in our grant portion, which is going to affect it. So when you see the final, in the next item, if you look at the attachment, there's a difference there, and we're going to finish at about 390,000 into fund balance. And I think what I want to caution the board is when I look at our expenses and our revenues from last year, and I'm looking strictly only at activity, we're going to finish up this year very similar to last year. And when I work through, I can't tell what the other 420 school districts are going to do, but it looks like our shared cost is going to be very similar to last year. If our revenue limit goes down and the state aid is going to be about the same, it means the levy's going to go down. And the mill rate, corresponding mill rate, will also go down. And if we if we would spend everything, we're gonna drive the mill rate down. And because of enrollment, we have a little more leeway now to not overdrive it, because next year it might have to come back up. And I think we're better off to try to keep our change relatively flat, because most of us don't understand the impact of spending on school taxes. It's the bottom line. So I'm recommending that we go ahead and do the transfer. What's important to note finally is, if you looked at your board bills, there was a bill in there from commercial roofing. And that activity didn't get finished it was, Jake had got it out for bid early. There was a delay in getting started. We didn't get it finished in June business. So that's coming out in July, and that's gonna come out of the Fund 46 transfer fund, long-term capital improvement fund. So essentially, we're gonna wash with about a $500,000 contribution to Fund 46. Where, after that happens, we'll have a balance of about $1.2 million in Fund 46. Okay?
So just to be clear for everybody, we're going to transfer $750,000 from Fund 10 to Fund 46.
Correct.
And we're going to overspend Fund 10 by about $330,000.
Underspend.
Underspend. So we're adding it to the fund balance.
Correct.
Okay.
And, you know, I mean, the
I had
big
it
part of it.
backwards.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And we have an additional $769,000 in revenues this year that was not anticipated. Okay.
Thanks, Tim.
Are there any other questions for Tim? Hearing none, we have a motion and a second. I will ask for a roll call vote, please. Mary Kay.
Matt Miller,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Matic Nelson,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes, and the motion carries. Letter D, consideration to amend the 2021-2022 budget. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the amended fiscal year 2020-21 budget as presented, showing expenditures in the general fund of $28,723,554.82 and expenditures for all funds of $33,236,500.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Any questions? Yep. Hearing no questions, Mary Kay, roll call vote, please.
Mary,
Yes.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Matic Nelson,
Yes.
Matt Miller,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes. And the motion carries. Item E, consideration to approve milk bids for the 2022-2023 school year. Looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the milk bid from Prairie Farms Dairy as presented.
Motion?
I'll second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any questions for Sarah? Glad to have her here tonight. I do just want to make a comment, Sarah, that our Pete Ballas with Pete's Distributing, he and I have been friends for several years. I did touch base with him. This is not affecting his company at all. He's still distributing the milk to our school. Yeah. Absolutely. You want to come over to the mic, please? Thank you.
Okay. I did look into the Organic Valley. I put out a request and they haven't gotten back to me yet.
Okay.
So, but milk has gone up everywhere. And with Pete, they do a good job, and he also delivers to all 5 of our schools. So if we were to go to other means of getting milk, it may be that it was only be delivered to 2 schools instead, and then we'd have more maintenance having to deliver, so.
That was the short version of what Pete gave me of a half an hour conversation.
I know.
Yeah.
But he's a great guy, so.
Yes, he is. And he's been doing this for 17 years. That's awesome. All right, any other discussion? Hearing no discussion, Mary Kay, roll call vote, please.
Shriver,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Maddock Nelson,
Yes.
Matt Miller,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes. And the motion carries. Item F, consideration to approve the girls softball spring training event in Florida. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve planning for the 2023 girls softball spring training event in Florida.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded, and we have Coach Sandy with us tonight. If there's any questions or anything you want to add to what has been presented, Sandy, you can come on up.
When Mary Kay asked for some information, I had sent the link to the possible place that I wanted to consider for next year. And I also printed out, the last time we went was 2019, I printed out the price breakdown, all the contact list. I'm anticipating the cost will be a little bit higher because everything has gone up. But I'd be taking one less coach and one less girl, which would probably it'd come out in the wash. It all come out of my budget, not my budget, my fundraised money. Although it sounds like we have extra money. Something.
That was good.
Tim, they're listening.
This has been enlightening. It's been fun. So that's all I have to say. Any questions for me?
So you're saying that this is going to be paid for out of fundraising
We
monies,
fundraise,
not from the, whatever funds from the school district?
Yeah.
correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any fundraisers you do, let us know.
My fundraiser is, I do one fundraiser. It's simple. It's community service based. The girls ask for donations in exchange for doing community service.
Awesome.
Very
And it's
good.
Love
been
that.
quite successful for the last at least 8 years, I think. 8, 9 years, I think we've been doing it since I've been here.
That is awesome. I absolutely love that idea.
Very generous community.
I would say that Sandy does a great job leading the girls softball team. I've been fortunate to take her and all the girls on a lot of trips. I miss those days, I miss those trips, but she keeps those girls very disciplined and very respected in all the communities that they go to. So great job. Thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you.
I also want to take the opportunity, since you're here, to congratulate you and your team on an awesome season.
Thank you.
Well done.
Appreciate it.
That was awesome.
Took me a long time to get one conference title.
But you did it. Now we're ready for the second one
Right.
coming up.
Thank you.
Okay, no other discussion. Mary Kay, roll call vote, please.
Bardo,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Maddock Nelson,
Yes.
Matt Miller,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Shriver,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes. And the motion carries. Item G, consideration to approve 2022-2023 athletic trainer agreement with Aspirus Langlade Hospital. I'll be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the 2022-2023 athletic trainer agreement with Aspirus Langlade Hospital as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? This is pretty routine, what we do year after year, correct?
I read this, but I would get to see if there's any fiscal impact or if there's not.
I don't believe that there is, Angie. There's
Okay.
no
I did
financial
not
obligation.
See it stated either way
Mhm.
in there, so I was just curious, so, okay.
Yes, sir.
I think the reason we bring it to the board's attention is not only just to remind the service that's being provided by Aspirus, but at some point there may be other providers in the community that might be interested in participating. And at that point, we would, try to vet whoever would apply.
Exactly.
Yep.
Okay. All right. No other discussion. This doesn't involve a financial expense, so all in favor of accepting the motion that has been made as presented, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
I'm going
Then-
to recuse myself.
Thank you. Let the record reflect that Dr. Deep has recused himself. Anybody opposed? Then the motion carries. Item letter H, consider to approve design proposal for middle school window replacement with Bray Architects. I'll be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the design proposal for middle school window replacement with Bray Associates as presented. Bray Architects as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Go ahead, Mr. Jake.
So, the initial part of this that I initially have to agree to is the $2,500, which, is under the $10,000 limit, but the intent of how companies like Bray work, anytime that you guys have been involved with any of the referendum talks or stuff like that, architects always, or construction managers always want to get their fee structure if the project comes to fruition out there ahead of time. So the intent of the work that I would do with Bray is design the solution for the windows at the middle school. Years ago, they took out the big windows that were originally in there and they put in the smaller, and they're more of a lighter commercial or residential type quality. I don't know that that's the proper solution to begin with, and secondly, the surround that they've then boxed in to close the big openings is deteriorating and needs to be assessed and replaced to some level. That really gets into a lot of expertise that I personally don't have, so for me to write the spec on that and come out with the best outcome both financially, quality, and visually for that building, that gets a little outside of my expertise, so I need to bring someone in to help with this. And anybody that does that is going to have a fee structure tied to the end value of the contract of the work being done. So what that means is they would help us design it for $2,500. If we put it out to bid and it comes in for $500,000 is the bid that we get from the contractors that do the work, we would then owe that 8% to them, but that would include them helping us create all the bid documents, do the bidding process, making sure that the project is done to the standards, seeing that project through. So we're not necessarily committing any money right now because I don't know. I mean, the project could be $100,000 or it could be $1 million. It depends how much money we have to spend and how much we want to bite off at one time, and what the solution is going to be. But they're going to help us find that right solution for the building based on a number of criteria. But I didn't feel right taking them on board for the $2,500 without talking with you guys about what the understood percentage would be if the job does come to fruition. Another thing that I will say about Bray is they've been extremely helpful with us for decades here in this district. They started with the high school here. They've worked with us a number of times. They did all of the secure entrances with me on a pro bono status. They just donated everything because it was a safety thing and it was building that partnership with us. So they've been right there to help us every step of the way, and for whatever reason we really haven't had to pay them anything yet. This would really be the first project that I would actually pay them on since I've been here, so, but they've been very helpful along the way, so I enjoy working with them, more than qualified, and they really know the history of the community and the district, so they're a great partner.
Will they be going back with the same size window, or will they be changing that? And then also doing the wood construction that's around it?
Yeah.
I know that's a lot of
I
questions there.
would rather open the windows up a little larger. You know, when they shrunk those windows down, it was in the late 80s, and the thought was energy efficiency, make little small windows would be the best way to go. With the effects that you can have on the environment indoors, I think that there's some better solutions out there, but again, that's what they're gonna help me work through, present me, this may be the Cadillac. We don't wanna go there financially, but we can find something that fits our financial picture and is, going to improve the classroom environment for our kids, so.
Are you thinking these windows would open?
Yes,
Okay.
especially at the middle school. We don't have air conditioning there, so
Okay.
that's another part of that they can really help with their tools. They design this stuff all the time. They're gonna be able to help us with the airflow, either positives or negatives, so.
Okay, thank you.
Is it all the windows? Why am I blanking on where on the?
Yeah, so
Okay.
basically in, like I said, the late 80s, I think Joe Schrader just bought like a semi-truck full of windows. They're all the same at the middle school,
Yeah.
they're all the same at all of our elementaries, even the ones that we've closed, and he just put that same window in everywhere. Took out whatever window was existing, framed it down to fit one size window, and that's pretty much everywhere in the 3-story and the 2-story at the middle school. The 98 edition is different, and then 53 part of the old gym is a whole different kind of beast, but we'll take care of that too.
Thank you.
So, but yeah, we have a lot of the
So
same
for
windows.
clarification, you're talking all the windows?
Yep.
Okay.
And hopefully, finding the right solution that we can use wherever those windows are, so.
Any other questions? It's going to be a good discussion for your committee of the, committee meeting.
Yep.
Almost slipped and said the committee of the whole. I'm used to a committee meeting coming up. So will you have some information from Bray by that time, August? What would be the?
Second.
No, the 8th?
Probably not.
Probably not, okay. Okay.
Yeah, 8th, sorry.
All right, hearing no other discussion, Mary Kay, we will do a roll call vote, please.
Deep,
Yes.
Maddock Nelson,
Yes.
Matt Miller,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Fardo,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes, and the motion carries. Item I, consideration to approve the 2022-2023 essential standards. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the 2022 to 2023 essential standards as presented.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Amy?
This is also kind of procedural. Every year I have to present in June. Our standards are derived from the Wisconsin DPI approved standards, and we did add to the essential standards document of our school district in the area of math in our grades K through 5 this year. We did a lot of work with math, standard work, because we hadn't done that yet. So those were added to our document this year, and we are working on adjusting some of our high school standards as we work through what we're learning about grading and assessing too. So it's an evolving document. And all of those links are live if you choose to go to them. They go to the spot in the document, and then also on each header in our document we'll link to the specific standards from Wisconsin DPI website as well. So you can visit them in a number of ways.
Any discussion, questions for Amy? Hearing none, all in favor of accepting the motion presented, let it be known by saying aye.
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 Opposed, same sign, and then it's carried. Item J, consideration to approve full-time substitute instructional assistant position analysis. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the full-time substitute assistant position analysis as presented.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Since Heidi Siebert has left the building, we will revert to Dr. Sprague.
So the board passed this same type of motion both for certified staff at each level. And we thought then that since we had ESSER dollars, it would be helpful to have a full-time sub for support staff as well. However, we are only asking for one, so this position would be district-wide. Support staff, there's no question how essential they are to the success of any day in the life of this district, and so we would prioritize if there are positions we couldn't fill accordingly.
So this would be funded through ESSER dollars, so, in my opinion, I think it should, be noted in there that, in the job description, that this would be a temporary position, LTE.
Funding source says ESSER, but like the board indicated for the other positions funded through ESSER, if and when we hire, we'll make sure our candidate understands.
Will that be in the job title, LTE, so that it's very clear? There's no misunderstandings at all.
We could. I don't know that we've done that with the others, but there's no reason we couldn't.
I think that would be a good idea. Just so this person, there's no surprises for this person,
Right.
Down the road, so.
I know, Tim, you have kept all of us on top of who's been funded from the ESSER funds and who's not been. If you can just continue that whenever we add people on that's funded from the ESSER, that list coming to us, that would be greatly appreciated. Any other questions, comments, discussion? Hearing none, I'll ask Mary Kay for a roll call vote, please.
Maddock Nelson,
Yes.
Matt Miller,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes, and the motion carries. Item K, I'm going to have to recuse myself from discussion and pass the gavel on to the Vice President, Dr. Bardo, as he takes the lead.
Consideration to approve the 2022-2023 employee handbook changes. Asking for a motion.
I move the board approve the 2022-2023 employee handbook changes as presented.
Second.
Having a motion first and a second, we will now turn it over to Dr. Sprague, who will explain the changes that are being made in our employee handbook.
Thank you. The first attachment is the one I'll draw your attention to. The second attachment is for your benefit if you'd like to read the handbook as it was printed for, or approved rather, for 21-22. And then the third attachment is actually the first change, and that is President Pyatt's welcome. So back to the first attachment, you'll see under the grievance procedure, we just added Neola policies there for a quick reference for staff, and then took out some obsolete language under anaphylaxis management. Then we go down to section 9 of benefits, and we needed to add dependent care since there are flexible spending accounts for employees there. Part 2 is something that we've discussed with the board multiple times. This will be the first time now that we're adding it to the handbook with your approval. Knowing that we have such a limited number of applicants for positions, like other districts, we are exploring alternative educator licensing programs. The one we used most often is with our CISA 9 partner, the Excellence in Education program. So what we would like to do to make it both affordable and palatable for candidates that we know would be good fits for these positions is we'd like to offer a reimbursement of $2,000 per year for up to 3 years. So that's a total of $6,000 for employees who complete such a program at our request.
I have a question.
Dr. Sprague,
Yes.
I mentioned this before, but we get student teachers from universities. Why don't we offer them the same reimbursement if they come back and teach in our district?
My answer, the only thing I don't like about that, Andy, is what if there is not a position available? So if they come back and teach, I would love that, provided they're, you know, successful student teachers, but then what if we don't have any openings? Then I don't know how, if we put that in the handbook, how that would impact us. But I do know, I'll use Hunter Kirsch as an example. He student taught at the middle school, did a great job, put him in as a long-term substitute, and then hired him. And he had other offers on the table, but because of, I like to think the growing up in the ranks here with that staff, he accepted, and so we do try to lock them in when we're able.
So we could give it to them as a signing bonus.
If there's a position available, you mean? We could.
Because, you know, I like the program at CISA 9. It serves us well.
Mm-hmm.
But it seems like there's been a lot of students that go to a traditional college, and then if we could get them back here as student teachers, it would be just a little bit more of a hook to get them back.
So you're suggesting a stipend if they choose to student teach with us? Am I understanding correctly?
I would do that too. You know, that's not quite what I meant, but you gotta get them
Student
back here.
teaching leading to employment is how I understood you.
Yes.
Yes.
If I heard
If
you
there's-
correctly, Andy.
Ideally, it would be teaching.
So
leading
if
to
we had
employment.
a student teacher that we like, and they choose to stay with us by taking one of the positions that opens up, to induce them to stay in our district, we would offer them a $2,000 bonus at signing.
That's how I understood it.
That's how I took it.
Yep.
Okay.
Being an entrepreneur, I would take a chance on any student teacher that came here and give them the $2,000 right up front. And I'd take my chances that they're gonna make a connection with our staff, our principals, and they'll wanna come back to Antigo.
Without a
But that's a little bigger chance that
Yeah, it's
some
a
of
bigger
you wouldn't like
chance.
to take.
I think that there should be some type of contract saying that you'd work in our district for so many years. I think we should also look at putting that in place, because I've seen a lot of, more and more of the sign-on bonuses coming through. So all of those, I think, should have some kind of contract saying, you know, if you get this sign-on bonus, then you're committed for, I don't know, 3 years or something. So they don't just get it and then leave us next year.
We agree. That's why the proposal here highlighted for you, 2,000 per year, that would be, you know, up to 3 then. If they only stay for 1 year, they only get 2,000 of that total reimbursement.
I'm at the other end. I think that the idea is that they stay 3 years, complete the program, and then they get 6. That they don't get 2,000 per year, but if they do it
We
for
did discuss that, but then that's, I think the total cost perhaps is about 9,000. And for somebody in that position, it might be difficult to spend that money up front and wait for any reimbursement for over 3 years. But we did discuss it.
Yeah, we did.
For the purposes of this discussion and for others that might be watching currently or at another point, can you just give some examples of alternative educator, like positions that would utilize this?
Great question. There are different pathways. So, for example, we do not have any, or many, I should say, tech ed teacher candidates right now. Traditional, went to school to be a tech ed teacher. So what we're looking at are those who've had careers in technical fields And then there's a career pathway. So if you've been doing the work in a different capacity, you can expedite to a teaching license that way. There's also, oh, Amy, help me. There's one other. Nope, that's all right.
So the other main one we really use is if you have a bachelor's degree, but not in education. So let's say I have a history degree, but I don't have a teaching degree in history. This program with CISA 9 can help you get that teaching license so you could teach in an area as well. So you have to choose which area you're going into when you enter that program, because then you set up like a student teaching experience and your portfolios around those things, but you have to have a bachelor's degree.
Yes, thank you, Amy. So those are the two most common that CISA 9 offers. And Al Betry, who just became director at CISA 9, I forget the exact number, but that program has exploded in enrollment since they first opened it a few years back. So, and it's all related to the lack of candidates, number of candidates across the country.
There was about 40 candidates last year, and 28 of them were in special ed. So, you know, special ed is a big need for us. And so that's filling a need for districts. And we talked about that, and they were talking about adding another cohort. So a cohort is about 20.
Do they track retention after they complete the program? How many then stay in the field?
Do we as a district or?
I'm guessing that'd be CISA.
CISA 9 does, yes.
I'm not sure. I would guess so. And since it is still fairly new, that's a good suggestion I can make to Al.
And they also track where all these teachers are. So there's a small number in southwest Wisconsin, because we worked with CISA 3 one year and had a partnership program with them. So we train teachers in that area. But anywhere in the state, a teacher can sign up for this program, and they've made it more virtual, so they don't have to drive there quite so many times, but they still have to drive there some.
Okay, I'll move on to Appendix C. The board did approve, and now it's just added to the handbook, that teachers who sub for another teacher during their prep period, you raise that stipend from $16 to $20 per class, or the teacher can choose an additional hour of sick leave instead.
I have a question regarding that. Okay, so this is only for teachers who substitute for another teacher, but not other staff, because we're, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're pulling in staff to help substitute for teachers, and they don't get paid.
Support staff, if they cover, let's say during a time, they don't really have prep periods, but if they give up part of their lunch or something, let's say, they get the higher of the two, either the sub rate or their rate. So they are compensated, just not on these terms.
Okay.
We discussed that at length too with the board when we approved this.
Okay.
Appendix D, benefits. As you know, we changed health insurance carriers, so the language that you'll see highlighted now is a result of that change over the next few pages. And that takes us all the way to the last page then with the employee handbook, the signature page, because that's done electronically now. And that concludes all of the changes we're asking you to approve tonight.
Any further questions? Hearing none. Mary Kay, roll call vote.
Matt Miller,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Madig Nelson,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes. Would someone but our esteemed president know that he can come back in? We are 2L.
Okay, item L, report of district retirements and resignations. Looking for a motion, please.
I move the board approve the resignation of Tanya Zreik, payroll and benefits specialist.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion, I'm sure Tim is weeping over this because Tanya is a tremendous asset to his staff. So thank her very much for all of her hard work and dedication that she has given to the payroll and benefits department there. All in favor of accepting this resignation of Tanya, let me know by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. And then it's carried. Item M, report of district new hires. I will be looking for a motion.
I move the board approve the following new hires. Gary Gumbert, alternative education teacher. Tyler Lorenz, alternative education teacher. Alyssa Utek, school counselor. Dale Larson, grade 7 social studies. Tanya Harden, middle school art. Rebecca Panuska, high school physical education. Sherelle Burden, high school instructional assistant. And Doug Littlejohn, middle school custodian.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
I have one, question. I'm just curious on why, the first one, Gary, is hired at a level 3 with 0 years of experience.
Multiple offers on the table for him, so essentially a bidding war.
Okay. I was just curious about that, 'cause, yeah.
That's typically what the sign-on bonuses are part of as well.
Any other questions or discussion? Dr. Sprague, where are we as far as open positions for teaching staff, certified staff, as well as support staff at this time?
I should have put that together, but I can find it quickly.
I should have asked you.
Obviously, we still have positions for school psych and social worker, cross-categorical teacher, 2 targeted support, or 3 actually, targeted support teachers, behavior strategists, grade 2, grade 4K, tech ed, grade 4, art, behavior strategist, this is at the middle school now, reading resource, history at grade 7, and then at the high school, ELA 8th grade, family and consumer ed, Spanish, and 2 IAs. Not to mention Jake's department or central office.
Okay, we still have a number of positions that are open.
Julie, is it easy enough to share how many of those open positions, how many are certified staff required? Or certified teacher?
Every one of them except an IA would require certification.
If I counted correctly, it was 17 or thereabouts.
Right.
Any other discussion?
That's true.
You must have read my mind, because I was just getting ready to say, I think that's pretty good progress there.
No, I appreciate you saying that silver lining is important.
Yeah, and since you didn't share that in the microphone, it's really important. So 30-some vacancies down to 17, so huge progress being made. Thank you.
Dr. Sprague, would it be possible next month, whenever we have the report of district hires, you can add an attachment on there with where we are with more progress? Hopefully that number is even lower to 0. Okay, no other questions, comments? All in favor of I'm sorry, we need a roll call vote, please. Thanks, Mary Kay.
Mary,
Yes.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Maddock Nelson,
Yes.
Matt Miller,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes. And the motion carries. Item number 6, letter A, consideration of a motion to adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85(1)C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction to exercise responsibility, specifically to discuss sick leave reimbursement for administrative coordinators.
I move the board adjourn into closed session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.851(c), considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility, specifically to discuss sick leave reimbursement for administrative coordinators.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Mary Kay, roll call vote, please.
Schreiber,
Yes.
Bardo,
Yes.
Deep,
Yes.
Maddock Nelson,
Yes.
Matt Miller,
Yes.
Mary,
Yes.
Hyatt,
Yes. Okay, we will adjourn to go into closed session. We are ready? Okay, as a result of closed session, the board has approved the sick leave reimbursement for the administrative coordinators. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
Actually, Danny, I have one more, I just want to, and I don't know when this would be appropriate to bring up, so I'm going to do it now. Would it be possible going forward on agendas to have any items that are listed as, that would have a fiscal impact, what that fiscal impact would be listed on the agenda? Yeah, somewhere in the motion.
We could. There have been times in the past, if I recall, Tim, you know, if we're going to spend money up to X amount of dollars, the fiscal impact that would have.
Yeah, I think that would be good for,
Yeah,
for everything going forward.
that has been, yeah.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion's been made to adjourn. Second. All in favor of adjourning, let me know by saying aye. Opposed, same sign. Okay, you're dismissed.
2 hours.
9:03.
Minutes.
Keep that in your vehicle so that it's easier for you to your water bottle.
2:03.
Every day that happens?
Probably should say, if there anybody opposed, say aye.
I feel bad that I said I got to cook dinner with my family tonight.
Yeah, but,
That was me.
you know, I've always said if,
Now I know for sure.
if one person has a question, I'm sure somebody else has a question. I'm not a teacher.